Okay, guys. So we are going to read the next part of chapter 2. All right. Baloo and Bagheera found Kaa stretched out on a warm rock in the afternoon sun. The giant snake was admiring his new skin, for he had been in seclusion for the past 10 days while shedding his old one. Darting his blunt-nosed head along the ground, he twisted and coiled and knotted the 30 feet of his body. Kaa was not a poisonous snake, but he had the power to hypnotize, and his hug was deadly. Each time he licked his lips, he thought of his next meal. He has not eaten recently, Baloo said, sounding relieved. He will be eager to hunt the Bandar-log. But be careful, Bagheera. Kaa is always a little blind after he has changed his skin and is quick to attack. Good hunting, cried Baloo as he approached the snake. Bagheera came up behind Baloo slowly, for he did not know Kaa well and was wary of him. Good hunting for us all, Kaa replied. Is there any news of the game afoot? I am as empty as a dried well. We are hunting, said Baloo casually. He did not want Kaa to know how much he and Bagheera needed his help. Allow me to come with you, Kaa said, or I shall have to wait for days on a wood path and climb half a night for a chance at a young ape. I came very near to falling on my last hunt, and the noise of my almost falling waked the Bandar-log. They called me the most evil names. Footless yellow earthworm, murmured Bagheera, putting the name into Kaa's head. Did they call me that? Kaa asked with a low hiss. Something like that, Bagheera replied. They will say anything, even that you have lost your teeth and dare not hunt anything bigger than a baby goat because you are afraid of the ram's horn. Kaa's black eyes were steady, but Baloo and Bagheera could see the muscles on his throat ripple and bulge with anger. It is the Bandar-log that we follow now, said Baloo. Those nut stealers and pickers of palm leaves have stolen our man-cub, Bagheera added. Have you heard of him? I heard news from Ikki the porcupine of a manling that was part of the wolf pack, but Ikki is full of stories that are half heard and badly told. I did not believe. It is true, said Baloo. He is the best and wisest and boldest of man-cubs. We love him, Kaa. Our man-cub is in the treacherous little hands of the Bandar-log, who fear Kaa alone, said Bagheera. They have good reason to fear me, said Kaa. Chattering, foolish, vain creatures, we must remind them to speak well of their master. Where have they taken the manling? Toward the sunset, I believe, said Baloo, though the jungle alone knows. Just then a cry came from above. Up, up, hello, hello, look up, Baloo. Ran, the kite, was soaring overhead, the sun shining on the edges of his wings. I have seen Mowgli among the Bandar-log, and he asked me to tell you. They have taken him to Monkey City, the cold lairs. That is my message. A filling meal and a deep sleep I wish for you, Ran, cried Bagheera. I will remember your deed and set aside part of my next kill for you. It is nothing, Ran replied, as he circled to leave. The boy spoke the master words. He has not forgotten to use his tongue or his teachings, Baloo said with a chuckle of pride. I am proud of him, agreed Bagheera. But now we must go to the cold lairs. The cold lairs was a place that all the jungle people knew of, but seldom visited. An old deserted city, lost and buried in the jungle. It had once been inhabited by man. Only the monkeys spent time there now. It is half a night's journey, Bagheera said, looking at Baloo. I will go as fast as I can, replied the bear. Kaa and I must go ahead, said Bagheera. Follow us as quickly as you can. The panther rushed ahead at a fast canter, while a silent Kaa kept up easily. You are no slow goer, Kaa, remarked Bagheera. I am hungry, Kaa replied, finding the shortest route and slithering along beside him, and they called me names. In the cold lairs, the monkey people were very pleased with themselves for capturing the man-cub, and Mowgli, who had never seen a man-made city before, was fascinated by the decrepit buildings all around him. The ruin was set on a little hill. Trees had grown into and out of the walls of the houses, and wild vines hung out of the tower windows of the crumbling palace of a long-dead king. The cobblestones in the courtyard, where the king's elephants once stood, were now thrust apart by wild grasses and young trees. Below the palace were the rows and rows of roofless houses that made up the city, as dark and empty as catacombs. The monkeys called the ruins Monkey City and pretended to be men. But they had no idea what the structures were, or how to use them. They explored all the rooms and buildings, but never remembered what they had seen. They sat in the king's council chamber and scratched for fleas, or ran in and out of the roofless houses collecting broken bricks or plaster. But they always forgot where they hid the bricks and plaster and would fight among themselves about it. Then they would run down to the palace terrace and shake the orange trees just to watch the fruit fall. Over and over again, the monkey people did these things in Monkey City until they grew bored and went back to the jungle treetops, hoping that the jungle people would finally notice them. Mowgli did not understand or like the way the monkeys lived, for he had grown up with the law of the jungle, and the Bandarlog had no laws. They did not let him rest after their long journey and did not give him anything to eat. "Mowgli will teach us how to weave sticks together to protect us from the cold," one of the monkeys told his companions. But when Mowgli showed them how to do this, they imitated him for only a minute before losing interest, howling and pulling one another's tails. "I want to eat," said Mowgli. "Bring me food or give me permission to hunt here." Several monkeys bounded away to bring him food, but they got into a fight out on the road and left the nuts and fruits they'd gathered lying in the dust. Frustrated, Mowgli roamed the city, giving the strangers hunting call, but nobody answered him, and he began to feel lonely and afraid. "Everything Baloo told me about the monkey people is true," Mowgli said to himself. "I must try to get back to my own part of the jungle." But as soon as Mowgli walked to the edge of the city, the monkeys dragged him back, telling him how lucky he was to be with them, the great Bandarlog. They led him to a terrace above the sandstone reservoirs, which were half full with water. The terrace was lovely, with the summer house whose walls were made of beautifully carved marble, set with colorful polished stones. As darkness fell, the moonlight shone through the carvings and cast delicate shadows on the ground. Hundreds of monkeys gathered on the terrace to tell stories about how strong and brave and wise they were. The tales went on, and whenever a speaker paused, all the monkeys would shout, "We are the most wonderful people in all the jungle. We all say so, and it must be true." Mowgli was exhausted, and his head spun with the noise of the monkeys' voices. "Tabaqui the jackal must have bitten all these people," he told himself, "and now they are all crazy." Mowgli looked up and saw a large cloud about to cover the moon. "I should try to run away in the darkness of the cloud cover," he told himself, "but I am so tired." In the ditch below the city wall, 2 other creatures watched the same cloud and the mass of monkeys. They, too, were waiting for darkness. Even a panther and a python were no match for 200 Bandalog. "I will go to the west wall and come down swiftly with the slope in my favor," said Kaa, as the cloud hid the moon. "I wish Baloo were here," said Bagheera, "but we must do what we can without him." Up on the terrace, Mowgli heard the sound of Bagheera's feet behind him as the panther broke the circle of monkeys surrounding the man cub. And that's where I'm going to stop.